2 years of making videos and 10,000 subscribers later, here we are, folks. I promised a long while ago that over 10k I'd only be doing a Little Nightmares marathon, which will be happening in June, but I'd also make a video about my OCs, the creatures that old fans will have seen a lot. So I want to set the groundwork for what this world is and who these characters are. The story I want to tell takes place in 2 parts. The first is in the early 2000s with the owl, and the second spans from the mid-2010s to the mid-2020s, called Starshine Theater, which will be the main focus of this video, mainly because the more developed side of this universe, and its less spoilery part. If all goes to plan, and I'm eventually able to make these characters and stories a reality, I plan to tell the Owl's part through an analog horror or web series that swaps between the Owl's POV and a Protagonist POV. Starshine, on the other hand, I plan to make a game with a few chapters. A prologue following a group of urban explorers in the theater, and between 3 to 4 chapters following our protagonist, Sarah, with the planned chapters currently being Starshine, Welcome Home, and Mishaps. These will be the 3 chapters I'll be telling you about today, at least character-wise. I'll sprinkle in a few hints towards the story as we go, but I don't want to give too much away. And a fair warning that everything in this video is subject to change. I could literally just decide tomorrow to axe a character or 2, so just know that this is not all permanent. But with that said, let's sit down, buy a ticket, and jump right into Starshine Theater. Like any story, I think it's fitting to be with our protagonist and setting. This is Sarah, a 17-year-old who's just about to graduate high school. She's lived in Moongrove her entire life, and as a kid she would spend days at the Starshine Theater. Both of her parents worked behind the scenes on the technical side of the shows, so she had basically free reign of the entire place. She got to explore everything, interacting with cast and crew, learning the ins and outs of the building, even discovering hidden passageways and shortcuts only the staff knew about. Obviously, that led to a lot of mischief. She loved the theater, and the theater loved her, until, for reasons no one really understands, it shut down, leaving behind nothing but an empty shell of what used to be something special. Moongrove before Starshine Theater was a small town surrounded by forests. They were unremarkable to say the least, a pit stop town on long road trips, seeing people constantly entering and leaving, but the community wasn't small by any means. It just wasn't known for anything in particular apart from their urban legends, most of which were stories made up by children, something to scare other kids on the playground. The most recent of which being a creature with glowing orange eyes sat on the edge of a tree line, waiting for oblivious wanderers to enter the forests. The adults paid no mind to these stories, and they mostly stopped after a forest fire in the early 2000s. For years after, the town was quiet until the theater opened. With it brought jobs, development, and a chance to really put the small town of Moongrove on the map. People came from far and away to see the theater, to see these beloved characters on stage and in person. Unfortunately for everyone in Moongrove, Starshine Theater was a big reason the town began to flourish. And without it, people began to leave to look for work elsewhere, and the town slowly bled residents until it was only slightly bigger than it was before the theater opened. All of this sparked an obsession within Sarah as she entered her teenage years, as she would constantly try and find a way back inside, a way to find out for herself what had happened to the theater and everyone she knew. Luckily for her, Sarah's fellow urban explorer friends would stop her, and after years of the same routine, promised they would all go in and explore the theater together for graduation. And when the time came, they agreed they would meet at sunrise outside the theater and enter through an open storage warehouse. However, Sarah's friends would show up an hour earlier and enter through a different way, in an attempt to surprise Sarah and have a bit of fun when she arrived. An hour later, when Sarah finally got there, the theater was empty. Sarah as a character has been in development for maybe 4 years at this point. I designed her around the same time I was finishing CCAT's design, but I always knew I wanted her to be an urban explorer. It just made sense given her skill set within the story and how she acts. Sarah's always been curious and spontaneous, so when she wanted to do something, she would, and there was no way someone could talk her out of it. Maybe they could delay her, but she would always do it either way. It's also why I made her design out of so many muted colors. I mean, when you're spending your nights and early mornings sneaking around half-developed buildings and abandoned sites, you're gonna want to be hard to see, and overall, she's one of my favorite characters to write, as unlike many other horror protagonists or characters, I didn't want her to be badass or capable right off the bat. I've written her as lucky and a scaredy cat, but also resourceful and light on her feet. Think of her as Grace Ashcroft mixed with Ethan Winters in a sense. Most of the time when I'm writing or drawing characters, I have specific playlists for their vibe, and it helps me really get a better sense of the story and the situation they're in. I've linked these below in case anyone's interested, but if you want to get a clearer idea of Sarah as a character, I listen to A Lot of True Crime by Penelope Scott, Harpy Hair by Yellowcore, Sarah by Alex G, which no relation to the character, this was a fun coincidence, and You Smell of Dead Flowers by Feeslush. But that's all I really want to share for now. So let's move on to our antagonists, shall we? CCAT is my favorite starshine, probably because he was the first character I ever drew for the series all the way back in 2022. Originally, CCAT belonged to one of my friends, but since he hadn't used the character in years, I asked, hey, can I take this blue cat pirate? And he said yes, so here we are. CCAT has gone through a lot of development. Can you believe he actually had eyes and like a blank mouse when this first started? I changed those to button eyes and a smile because I didn't want to be compared to Catnap when he came out, but I think it actually looks better than Catnap, I'm not gonna lie. This era of CCAT culminated in this design sheet, which, while not the best, still gives you an early look at what I was thinking for CCAT and Sarah. I then started to refine the head a little, make it more circled than whatever this is, and then created this sheet, which is a lot closer to the modern day design. You can even see me starting to toy the idea that each starshine represents a phobia in some way, with masculophobia specifically being the fear of costumes and masks, which is why CCAT is the most costume and puppet-like of the bunch. It's also around this time that Sarah was created and the story of Starshine really started to take shape. Finally, for music recommendations, I'd say listen to The Nowhere King, both normal and reprised from Centaur World, Cold Island from My Singing Monsters, A Campaign of Shock and Awe by Evelyn, and Hidden in the Sand by Tally Hall. And with that said, let's talk about the lore, because this has just been a design talk so far. CCAT was the titular character of the theatre, originating in animated form before making the jump to physical locations, with actors wearing the suit to perform shows exclusively for families, opening their first location in Moongrove, where CCAT's actor was especially loved, being the main character, but also about how often he was on the show floor, taking photos, talking with parents and children. He was overall adored by the public. The costumes themselves were made so the actors could see out of the mesh smile, this way they could see below them easily and not worry about injuring children. However, after CCAT's costume would deteriorate. Limbs would fall off, seams would split, each requiring stitches and duct tape to stay on, done by CCAT himself. Eventually, his body would stretch and his limbs would sag, claws would grow, and he would feel his body having less and less sensation, until all that was left was two glowing eyes within the mesh smile. Now obviously I don't want to spoil too much about CCAT. He's the primary antagonist for the planned prologue in chapter 1, so I'm not going to tell you everything. If Starshine does become a game, you'll have 2 chapters to get used to him, so I'm sure you'll all become very familiar. With that said, let's move on to our chapter 2 antagonist, shall we? Our final Starshine today, or at least the one other fleshed out character, is Lily the Frog. When I first drew Lily over 2 years ago in 2024, I planned for her to represent trypophobia, and she was very much inspired by Happy Frog from FNAF 6, I can't even lie to you. But I abandoned her to work more on CCAT throughout 2024, and when 2025 came, I had a class where we needed to design a character. So I dusted off Lily and got to work. Taking aspects from Darian Quilloy and Passer's art, as well as this prototype Bendy, I started to sketch out different ideas for Lily, from head shapes, body proportions, color palettes, the works. I even had a debate with classmates on if she should have button eyes. But we decided, due to Lily's character leaning more towards being mischievous, that giving her eyes would help tremendously. Initially, Lily had legs, but I was the one who decided to chop them off, not only to help with the happyophobia, or the fear of being touched, but also to distance Lily from CCAT design-wise. Finally, I buffed her up, played around a bit with the face and faceplate, and I had my first full render of Lily, before I quickly scrapped it and made this, which I'm redrawing in the background. This class, however, led us to making these characters in an animatic, which I'm not going to show because they're like really bad. There's like nothing in them. I don't know how I passed that class. But also they have spoilers for Starshine Theater as a whole. But I will give you song recommendations. Those being, They're Coming to Take Me Away, haha, but specifically the remix by Sloppy Jane, which is in the playlist, Red Mageddon by Sodakin, Animal Cannibal by Karen Skadali, and Monster by Dodie. You'll probably see a theme in this playlist, and yes, I do enjoy torturing my characters. So let's talk lore. Lily was CCAT's second in command, the shyest of the group but still open to helping whatever chaos he was up to. Like the other actors, she performed not only on her own stage, but in group shows with the other characters. She was less active on the theatre floor than CCAT was, instead preferring to spend her time helping out in the many play areas of the theatre, making sure no one got into the side areas. Despite her best attempts, however, Sarah would somehow always find a way in. Her costume was made to be bigger than her cartoon counterpart, and because of this, they couldn't quite get the raincoat to fit. So they decided to become part of the set rather than having an extra thing for the actor to put on. However, after Lily began to lose herself, which in turn caused her to injure herself to a state that she would have permanent holes across her body, her stitches would be sewn and unsewn in hours, and her lower half would be reduced to mush. Her mind, as the defense, decided to keep a more childlike and joyful exterior instead of accepting her new reality. And CCAT, seeing this, would push her into the back storage area of the theatre, where she would be left for years, until Sarah would eventually open the door for her. Now again, I don't want to spoil too much, as Lily is by far one of my favorite characters, due to just how chaotic I can be with her. It's a challenge as well, because while on the surface she may seem like Mommy Longlegs or Spinel, I think she's a lot more complex than those two, and I hope I can display her as such when the time comes. And with that, we conclude our Starshine Theater talks for now. There are still many characters I don't want to tell you about, mainly because I haven't touched them in years, their concept was given to another character, or I just don't have their role in the story fully planned out yet. But don't worry, you're gonna get a little taste of all of that as we talk about the Owl. It's a prequel for a reason, so pay attention, okay? Now, first things first, this is the Owl. This is also the Owl. So what's the difference? Well, this channel is called Core the Owl. When the owl looks like this, is to represent me as the creator and as a person. When the owl looks like this, it's meant to represent the character of the owl, unless it's Halloween. I mean, come on, I had to dress up as something. Regardless, this is the owl we'll be talking about, the big sludgy one eye over here. So let's get started, because I'm going to be a lot more vague with this one. The owl is made of a substance I've nicknamed sludge, a sort of programmable substance able to learn and comprehend under the right circumstances. As such, in typical "we need something to happen" fashion, the sludge was placed into a container with a small cat, and on base instinct, it crushed and consumed the cat into itself. Initially, it became larger, then began to form sort of legs, and finally, eyes. They repeated this process with 2 owls and a which led to a creature able to comprehend, to talk, to communicate. In the meantime, they would harvest the excess sludge it left behind and use it on other creatures, creating 4 other beings made entirely of sludge. Now, this was the shortest of the batch, mainly because if I say anything else, I spoil a lot about the story and Starshine's story. This video is meant to serve as a jumping on point after all, so it's not everything that's going to happen in the story, come on. But hopefully this video managed to capture your imagination and interest at least a little bit. Starshine Theater and the Owl are projects I've been working on for years. They live in my head rent-free, and I hope to someday be able to share these stories with you all. So with that said, I've been Core, thank you so much for 10,000 subscribers, and I'll see you in whatever I make next. Bye bye!